Thank you very much. And the flow of events is very much, I'll just tell you the sequence of events here. We are going to record it for those people that weren't able to, unfortunately, make the session. But how I usually enjoy conducting these Employer Branding Africa thought leadership spotlights is to make sure that we get through the whole agenda, which isn't always easy because it is action-packed, and I try and limit it to 6 questions. And what I would like to do is maybe hold the questions and the answers to the end. And you can just put it in the chat box, and then Mel and I can attend to it at the end, just so we can keep the discussion flow going nicely. And please, in future, share the hashtag EBA Spotlight 2024. We are, in fact, on the 6th one. We've held 6 this year, and I've really hosted amazing people and, such informative sessions. There's been so many golden nuggets that have come out of these sessions, and people can operationalize and take things back into the workplace, which is wonderful. It's not just strategy, it's about actually operationalizing that as well. So without further ado, I'm just going to move on. Just sensitize you to who I am and what I do. I've put a few funny pictures in here. I mean, you can see me with my little helmet on. That was at National Foods in Zimbabwe in the mill. And I'm the founder and the CEO of Employer Branding Africa, which really is a consultancy that focuses especially around developing employer value propositions and basically putting together talent brands and what it's like to work within an organization, but also how to retain and motivate people internally. And working across Africa, and as you can see, I also do training. I started the Employer Branding Africa Learning Academy, which we will talk about at the end of the session. And that has also been a fantastic forum where like-minded people that have a passion for recruitment, marketing, and employer branding can actually share their findings, their challenges, their success stories, and everything. The Academy was originally launched as a learning management system, but this year we did 2 master classes, which really was beneficial for the attendees. So that's a little bit about me. You can see I love speaking to people, getting in there, understanding how they make organizations successful, because at the end of the day, they are your differentiators. So that's a little bit about me, and I'd like to hand over to our guest, Mel. So let's just hear a little bit more about you, a typical day in the life of Mel.
Thanks, Celeste. And yeah, thanks for inviting me to take part of this in the spotlight. I know we have known each other for a while now, and we've luckily been able to meet each other in person quite a few times. We've never been able to work directly together, but hopefully one day in the future that'll also come. So yes, I'm Melissa Carrington. I'm based in London at the moment. I am, as you can hear, from South Africa, from Johannesburg, and I'm with a company called Anglo American. Quite a few of my colleagues or my team are here as well from Anglo American, and we form part of the Center of Expertise. So that's the Talent Acquisition Center of Expertise, where we look after everything that has to do with sourcing, attraction, and employer branding. And hopefully I can share a few of my insights today.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. And I'm excited to get this discussion started. And it's been in the making for a while, as I say, and Mel's very busy, so I'm glad I've got some of your time today. I really appreciate you giving up your time today, Mel. So without this presentation being death by PowerPoint, what I like to do is I actually put the questions up, and Mel and I speak to those questions. The reason being that people drop in and they don't know what we are speaking to. So it's not because we're shying away from the camera, by no means. It is really about just assisting those people that are coming in later. And I think what's on the top of everyone's minds is that, let's face it, the world of work is changing rapidly. There's so much happening that's out of our control. There's so many macro influences, whether it be environmental change, the wars, the political situation with all the voting happening across the world, the emergence of AI and automation with a lot of skepticism and a lot of reluctance, and that all happening. And it's obviously got a knock-on effect to us in the workplace, but also when it comes to talent acquisition and ensuring that we preserve our employer brand and how we go to market. So on the back of that, Mel, and the changes and the movement within organizations and the economy and that, why should people still invest and strengthen their employer brand during times of change? Is it a priority, and why should it be a priority?
Yeah. So I think, you're very right. I think the world is constantly undergoing massive change. Some of it is conflicting change. Some of it, I think, is positive. I think some of it is unnerving. And I think that when we look to companies and when we look to corporates, especially, we often are looking at them as sort of this beacon of maybe stability, within the world. I know us as a brand, as Anglo American, especially in South Africa, and the people in South Africa that are on the call will definitely think of Anglo American as a house brand. You've generally had a relative or a friend of a relative or an aunt or an uncle or someone that has at some point worked for Anglo American, and it's always been considered a brand that you work for life, and a company that you work for life. And just as that is changing, the world of mining is also changing. And that's not to say you can't have a career, in mining for life, but I think we have to stay relevant as individuals, but also as corporates. And as a mining company, things are changing. Our future skills are changing. Our need for different types of skills, different types of people, different types of competencies is also changing. So in terms of your employer brand and what you're putting out there, I think that comes down to, again, being as, well, not again, but first and foremost, being as honest, transparent, and authentic about what we are looking for in talent and what your career could look like with us. And that might not be, a vertical career. It might be a horizontal career, but it might stretch across different parts of our business, or you might work with different teams. So I think hearing from our people during times of change, whether that be with us as an organization or whether that be a macro time of change, is critical, because whether we're putting out that message or not, there's a message. And that's a really important point as well, is, often companies, and I often speak to small companies, we deal with a lot of recruitment agencies, and recruitment agencies are, sometimes guilty of this because they're a small company. They often don't think that they need to have an employer brand. But because of the volumes of people that they speak to, they have a brand by default. And there is a perception in the market, and that perception is their brand. And if you do not manage that brand or manage the messaging that goes out, it's going to be managed for you. So I think that's why it is so important, not just to strengthen, but I would also use the words maintain and keep a consistent messaging of your employer brand during periods of change, because it's going to be there whether you put it there or not.
Correct. Thank you for that. And I completely resonate. And I think it's so relevant because people go on perceptions, right, Mel? And you know what? If you're not shaping and informing and almost highlighting what's happening within your organization and being authentic, very important, and using the trusted voice, and we'll talk about that later, of your brand advocates, people go on what they see at face value.
It'll happen regardless.
Yeah, and I think thus it's all very well building a formidable employer brand and value proposition, but the recruitment marketing piece is also very important, and the actual socializing it and actually advising and keeping people consistently informed on what's happening. within your workplace. Otherwise, it becomes stale, inconsistent, and people, they play guessing games, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you don't want people to create their own story. You want
Correct.
people to craft a story, but you want
Yes,
them to craft a story from bits of information that you've given.
100%.
And maybe even even validate their story. So if, for example, if you're hearing negative information about a company, what do we all do? We turn to Google. Same
Yes.
as if we were to go eat at a restaurant. Oh,
Yes,
I've heard of this great
correct.
pizza restaurant. I'm going to go and Google it. And you start to read the reviews, right? And when you
Correct.
start to read the reviews, immediately what I always see is if there is a negative review, my perception immediately changes when I see that restaurant has responded to a negative review, even if it is a negative review.
Of course, because there they're managing it again. It's about brand management all over again. Reputational management, I think they call it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Okay, the next question is about the 3 initiatives you can really focus on to nurture and grow your employer brand when not actively recruiting. Now, in line with this, it's actually quite interesting that when people look at employer branding, they look at it as a marketing, and it's about going out to market only when you are wanting to fill roles, which is so incorrect.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, it's also about actively, as we spoke to, it's about actively shaping and informing why you are a recognizable place of work. And it's about keeping that community informed, whether they are passive or whether they are an active work-seeking community, but also to internalize as well the fact that employer branding is not just outward bound marketing when you have jobs, but ensuring that you're creating that engagement. So in terms of that, Mel, the 3 initiatives that you focusing on when it comes to proactively shaping your brand? Can you give us some insights there? Give our people some insights around that?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll touch on some of the things that, and obviously some of my team are on the call as well, so they will all be grinning. But some of the things that we've done, this year where we have had less of a focus on external hiring is we've really focused on an alumni network. So we've built an alumni network, which basically, firstly, still maintains those deep connections with people who are leaving our organization. And it ensures that people that are leaving our organization are still considered part of the organization and are still connected to our organization. And that's really important for us because, again, a household name and being the large employer that we are, 97,000 people globally, we by default are going to have people that are going to leave us for, natural attrition purposes and other reasons as our business changes and adapts. And those people know people. And those people also know great people. And it's very important that we stay connected to those people so that they have the right message about what's happening in the organization, but also from a brand advocacy point of view. So we've done various things where we invite people, on exit. We also have started a LinkedIn group where people can connect with each other as alumni. We also send out content, which is, about what are we doing, hearing from our leaders. And we want to organically grow that further by, hopefully in the new year, hosting some events, maybe even having some leader, face-to-face leader talks, breakfasts, those kind of things with our alumni. Because whether on, wherever they are on their journey, they might never, they might be retired, not ever, be wanting to come back to Anglo American. But it's important that they gave us, when you work for an organization, you do give a piece of yourself. And we are part of their history. And I think it's important that for them and for us that we stay connected. So that's one of the things that we've done that's been really successful. And then another thing, we just touched on that is when you're not actively recruiting, that doesn't mean you shouldn't actively be working with the talent in the communities that that you would potentially be recruiting for. So this is the time when you can actually focus on your talent networking and your pipelining. So we do a lot of work around market mapping, direct headhunting, and sourcing for individuals based on the future skills that we would be hiring for, nurturing those people so that when we are looking to hire again, we already have those connections. And that's where, of course, sourcing,
Yes.
Really comes into it. So we have a dedicated sourcing team. We also have a CRM. We have, recruitment marketing approach with regards to content, where we send our content to those people. And we still do that activity, even though it might not be a job.
Yes.
Then
Okay.
the other thing that I think is often looked over and maybe not considered an employer brand activity, but internal talent. So internal talent, again, are your advocates. They're your powerful personal connections. They're a trusted voice. They're an ambassador. They are the people that are speaking to, again, great people know great people. They are the people that are speaking about your brand to other people. So if you cannot focus on external talent at that time, why not focus on your internal talent? And I think really identify people in your business that can be those ambassadors, but also identify where, for example, this year we had, can't think of the exact number off the top of my head, I think it was 55%, where we said we want to make sure that all our hiring is 55% internal. And I actually think it was higher than that. I think that's what we landed on. And there's employer branding efforts that need to go into that as well, because just because they're internal talent doesn't mean that they're married to you as an organization. It means they're talent. They might also be, being approached elsewhere. So I think you still need to put a focus on your employer brand for internal talent.
Beautiful.
So those are just to give you an idea of some of the things that we did.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. And it is about internalizing it as well. Otherwise, you're going to lose your people. What happens is they lose the relevance of your EVP, and your employer brand becomes diluted if you're not reminding them. And the next call that they get from a recruiter, they've had memory failure, and it's, oh, well, that sounds quite nice, but they don't forget. So it's that reinforcement, that re-embedding as well. So I completely agree with you there. And thus an inside and out approach when it comes to employer branding. Okay, let me see that I have not jumped. So again, we've touched on this, Mel. How do you share ways or innovations to keep your talent leaders motivated and engaged as brand advocates? Because obviously the proactivity puts you in a far better position, whether it be building a talent pipeline, whether it be sourcing, etc. But then, as you mentioned, the trusted voice is so essential. People deal with people. A corporate brand is not going to get half the amount of traction as, for example, Natalie or Lucy using their personal brand in order to engage with your talent.
And I think so often, again, when I'm talking to recruitment teams, we always have this, we always say keep yourself relevant. And often when I'm engaging with recruitment agencies, even they say, but when you say keep yourself relevant, what does that really, really mean? And if I had to give an actual practical example of that, is when we're talking about brand advocacy. So when I get approached by a recruitment agency, often my thought process is, what can they do for me? Or what can they do, not me, but what can they do for the organization that we cannot do ourselves? I would expect they have very strong networks of people, stronger than we would have. Now, that's obviously a very difficult thing to achieve because we are the brand, they are not the brand.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to advocacy in mining, for example, or engineering or technical skills, why are you not a thought leader or an advocate of certain voices in that field? And that's where I think we often don't stay relevant. Also, relevance for me is about how do you put your message across. These days, it's visual. Everybody needs to be able to visually display their messages. That doesn't just mean being able to put up a sexy PowerPoint. I think that's part of it. But can you write or put something visually appealing out to your audience? Can you do a quick selfie video? Those are all of the kind of things that I think separate you from, the job advert on LinkedIn that also used to seeing, are you looking for an exciting opportunity?
Yes,
um, So one of the things that we did is we introduced Canva,
yes,
which a lot of people know it as, they design their kids' birthday party invitations for it. But
yes.
we've created it as an actual toolkit for our recruiters to be able to use, that they can create videos, imagery, infographics, all sorts of things that they can actually share from their own to their own personal network, from their own personal LinkedIn. And I think that is personal brand advocacy.
And that's so relevant. And I think, again, when it comes to your conventional or your transactional talent leaders, there is, as much as we are living in a world of change with AI and ChatGPT, the fact of the matter is you need to ensure that the principles of what talent leadership has always been needs to shift to that of employer brand marketing and salesmanship and influence and advocacy, to your point. So remaining curious is so essential. Curious, yes, sourcing is important. Yes, being able to unpack a brief with a hiring manager, but being able to go over and above that and making it your business to understand and have or take a deeper dive into how you and your hiring manager can actually sell the role in question. Don't just take it at face value, and make it their business alongside of yours as a talent leader to find the person, so make them part of that journey, Mel.
Yeah, and I think make it their business is, again, with employer branding, whose responsibility is employer branding? Is it the employer branding team? Most companies don't have an employer branding team. Is it HR? No, they're not employer branding people. Is it recruiters? No. It's actually firstly, it's everyone in the business, and it's everyone that has a voice in the business, which is everybody, right?
Correct.
So if you're if you're applying for a position, you don't want to know the job description. What you actually want to know is, who am I going to report to? Who is the leader? And I want to know a little bit about that individual. And we haven't been able to get this right at Anglo American, but if we had, before you are being interviewed by someone, imagine you could receive a 30-second video to say, I'm Melissa, I'm going to be interviewing you, a little bit about me. I think firstly, it just takes that edge off, and it also makes it feel a little bit less just about you, but it's also about me. And it just gives you a sense, who's this Melissa? And it just brings Melissa to life
of it. And it mustn't be an avatar. It mustn't be an avatar.
No avatars.
I think again, and it's around, and this is what I'm a little bit nervous about, the AI and ChatGPT. The humility behind it is so important. That human connection, is it going to be amplified or not? And I think that, I know that at the end of the day is going to be your ultimate differentiator, because technology can take you only so far. AI can only take you so far. But already we are on the back foot with people still shying away from putting a recruiter video together or an introduction, to your point. So what is that going to do? What is that actually going to do? It's going to amplify the situation that we are already not good in. You see what I'm saying? So, and again, to your point, these are quick wins, Mel.
And they're also generally free.
They're free.
They don't cost money.
And it just takes, you just need to be a bit intentional. That's all. And break away from the same old, right? So, Mel, when it comes to holding the purse strings and basically justifying this whole thing around employer branding, recruitment marketing, one often gets questioned about, show me the money. How are we actually, why should we be putting resources and budget behind employer branding? So my question to you, especially while we are going through times of change, why should we be spending money? And how do you actually measure the success of these employer branding efforts through these times of change?
Look, this is a difficult one. And it's something that we constantly battle with, believe it or not. I think often people think, we're a listed company, we must have it all sorted. I assure you, we do not. Don't snippet that one and put that one on LinkedIn, Celeste, but that is definitely not the case. We've still got a lot of figuring out to do with a lot of different things. So how do we measure it? I mean, I think our biggest measure at the moment is looking at which positions we can influence. So, as an attraction and employer branding activity, it's not like recruitment activity where you can quantify it. So, okay, we had 5 people apply, we interviewed 2, and we've hired 1. Therefore, this is our success. But we can say, what have we influenced? Which positions do we know that we've always struggled to hire for? Which people do we struggle to attract? And by doing this activity, we've managed to attract these people. And we've seen a 30% uplift in that. Therefore, we know this channel is effective. Things like UTM trackers, where you can add literally a little, it's like a crumb that follows that person from where they, were on Facebook, and then they've ended up on your career website, and then they've ended up clicking apply. You can follow them. Things like that are very effective. But again, you've got to put them into the right dashboard, because if they're not in the right dashboard, it's just another big Excel document of raw data that you can't do anything with. So it's something that we have struggled with. And I think that, to be honest, these measures of success for us at the moment is less is more. I think we have 2 or 3 measures of success. One of them is the influenced hire, and that's how we measure it. I don't think you should have too many different data points when it comes to this, because then you're just going to lose track. Rather do lots of different things and see where you're getting the most bang for your buck, really.
Yeah, and that it makes sense, because no matter how big or small your organization is, at the end of the day, as you and I both know, employer branding as a best practice, it's never done. It's work in progress all the time. And it is influenced by macro happenings. It's influenced by anything, change in leadership, anything like that. And I mean, look at COVID, how it impacted. At the end of the day, there are certain things out of our control that obviously impacts what's happening on the employer branding front. But when it comes to measuring the success, once again, to your point, how successful are you with retaining, engaging your people internally? It doesn't have to be only outbound orientated. It can be a measurement on, how much succession planning is happening, how much mobility is happening.
Female hiring is happening.
There we go. So there is always work in progress, and there's always stuff to do and to measure. So, which obviously triggers from the proactivity that we spoke about earlier on in our discussion. So, in line with that, the company culture, how do you strengthen the employer brands, particularly in building trust and nurturing engagement? And I know we spoke about this quite extensively. You shed quite a bit of light there in terms of the leadership piece and that, which I was quite interested in hearing about, and maybe you can share with our people on the call.
Yeah, and I think this one is such a broad topic that it's not just about us at Anglo American, but I think it's in any organization. The culture, culture is not a poster. It's not words, like Ruben said. It's living the company values. It's culture in action, which I know is such a cliche kind of corporate, comment, but it is. Culture is unfortunately leader-led. Often leaders say, who is responsible for the culture of the company? It's not just leadership, it's all of us. Who is responsible? But it's also leader-led. If you have an organization where your leaders are not demonstrating the values, not living the culture, or not culture in action, I do not believe that they're going to build, that the company is going to build that trust. Who are the leaders? Are the leaders just our management team? Are the leaders just our executives? No. Leaders are anyone in the organization that has an ability to influence. You don't have to be a manager of people to be a leader. I think anyone that walks in a room and has a voice, which if you have the right culture should be anyone in the organization, then for me that is leader-led. And that's what I think promotes and strengthens a positive culture.
I think to your point as well, I think it's about living the brand, right? And I know it's cliche and people might say, oh, it's such a overused statement in that, but it genuinely is. It might just be.
Yeah, it's overused on purpose, I think,
Yeah,
for a purpose.
I think so. But it's,
yeah,
I think the biggest challenge with employer branding, whether it be when we talk about internalizing it or externalizing it, is the behavior. Internalizing as in, how are your leaders actually delivering and recognizing and rewarding you living your values? How is it carried through interdepartmentally, which is also very, very important? Are you delivering on your values? Or, when you work with one department to the next, if you're talking about agility, is that happening when you work with the different departments in that? And then when it comes to your talent leaders, you talk about a formidable employer brand. Do they know what the value proposition is? Are they able to articulate it clearly? Are they aligned with each other? Is one person saying one thing, another person saying another? So I think it is definitely, and we'll speak to this as well, it's a collective. It's that collective harmony of everyone doing, not seeing.
Yeah, and I think that's where we've got to give people the North Star. So, like for us in mining, safety, non-negotiable, right?
Yes.
It's that isn't, I'm not even sure that's a culture or a value. That behavior, non-negotiable.
Yes.
However, so if we have a culture, and also in a big company, you don't have one culture. You have thousands and thousands of micro cultures.
Of course.
People often say, oh, what is it like to work at Anglo American? What's the culture like? Well, where do you sit? Do you sit in a mine? Do you sit in the Johannesburg office? Do you sit in the London office? And do you work from home? The culture is also part of your team. Who is your leader? I think my team has probably a different culture to some of the teams that we even belong to. So it's culture is so relative, but I think there has to be a North Star of what we know that Anglo American has a culture of trust, integrity, safety. Those are the non-moving pillars.
Yes, I hear you. But how you actually flex that in your various departments and with your team.
I think it happens organically as well.
Definitely. Okay, we're making good progress. So here we are on the last question. I love closing with this question. What is the key lesson you've learned when it comes to employer branding during times of change? When, things are happening, there's uncertainty, and there's a knock-on effect, as I say, whether it be in the country from a macro, whether it be from an organization, whether it be in your team, whatever. How do you actually, what would you sum up as a key lesson?
I feel like what I'm going to say is so cliched, and I've already said it actually, so I'm just repeating myself, and probably everyone's heard it before as well. So hopefully they have. So hopefully everyone's eyes roll. But it's that employer branding is not a function of employer branding. And that's not to say that we don't want to do our jobs, but it's that employer branding is everybody's job in organization. And I think employer branding should be there to create that North Star, to create the toolkits, to create the messaging and the tones and the language. But it's very important that everyone in the organization has a role to play and that everyone is passionate and cares about people, even if you're not in a people-orientated job, because essentially that's what employer branding is. It's also about a feeling. It's when you come for an interview with me, is that you actually feel like you've been heard, you feel like you've been cared for, and you feel like you've actually been respected, whether you've been rejected for the position or not. And that is really important, because that's the stuff that leaves. That's the moment that matters to you, right?
Of course.
Is how you leave an experience and how you feel. If you leave this this webinar, you might hopefully remember certain points and things that maybe stood out to you and resonated with you, but you're also going to leave with a feeling. And I think that's the most important thing, is during times of uncertainty and change, how are we making people feel? How are we equipping our leaders to also pass that on?
It's so true, Mel. And I think, again, it's not a one-man band. It's really that collective. You know, you can't let people drop the ball anywhere. It's really not just sitting with Mel. You've got a whole team that lives the brand as well. You've got all your hiring managers that live the brand. They need to be devoted and committed to it. But I think in terms of the heavy lifting, to make things easier, especially when you are talking about overstretched leaders and that kind of thing, give them the tools, give them the knowledge, give them
Make
the
it
passion.
Easy for them.
Yes, give them the passion that you and I share, you know, or your team share. They need to be aligned. What is the emotional connection that they have?
Why should they care? Yeah.
Why should they care at the end of the day? So 100%. Fantastic. And based on all that knowledge, I would like to encourage you to start looking at 2025 and what your plan is when it comes to your talent brand. This all being said, where are you going? What have your learnings been? What is on the runway for 2025? Because at the end of the day, we spoke about tool enablers, we spoke about solutions, we spoke about strategy and the importance of operationalizing it and making sure that it actually gets wings and fly. With Employer Branding Africa, the Learning Academy basically gives you that. And we've successfully run 2 masterclasses this year. And I am teeing up for the first quarter. You can see the testimonials on the Academy site, and we've trained people from nice brands. And the advantage point was not just me talking and sharing knowledge, it was also the interactivity of the like-minded people that have the passion and drive that Mel and I have, and hopefully all of you have within this call today. So there is the QR code. You can register there. You're not selling your soul at this stage. It's really just to understand what kind of traction there is and what kind of interest there is for 2025. So how are you going to kickstart your next year? If you cannot get to these live masterclasses, you've got the option of also going online. And there are courses that I've personally developed. There's about 200 videos there, and it's not just the knowledge, it's about tool enablers that have been downloaded that you can hit the ground with running. So you get the knowledge, you get the strategy, but you also get those tool enablers that we spoke about earlier on. So take a look, those online courses. You can do it in the flow of work, in your own time, if you don't have the time to attend a live masterclass. And then let's get to, Ruben's got a beautiful list here of questions. I don't know if you can see them, Mel.
Yeah, and I do. It's a shame. He's also just put a note in that he needs to drop off, but I'll just quickly touch on, his questions for the sake of everyone else as well. So yeah, what's the difference between internal brand? What have we done to differentiate internal branding versus external employer branding? I think, look, this year we haven't managed to do too much in terms of external employer branding deliberately. However, I think some of the things that we've done from an internal point of view is really just make it really clear to our internal audiences how they can go about managing their own career within the organization. So we've done, big facelifts on our internal job opportunities pages. We've created bite-sized videos and, different pieces of content to be able to share with that internal population. How do you actually go about navigating your career? So just putting a focus on our internal population. And then, of course, also working practically with our internal talent teams for them to be able to identify who the talent actually practically is with TA. So it's making sure that that partnership is really rock solid. And then Ruben also mentioned about LinkedIn, so Glassdoor negative reviews. You're always going to receive Glassdoor negative reviews. It's impossible to stop those. Our commitment is that we respond to every single review within 24 hours, which we do. And where we do have really negative reviews, we of course flag them. However, Glassdoor is anonymous. So unless you're going to reach out directly to us, post your experience, there's not much more we can do other than, commit to obviously having a look at what transpired. But I mean, reviews, they're going to happen. And yeah, we do obviously candidate experience surveys and very much the same thing, where we can reach out and look at what transpired, we do.
Fantastic. Okay. Is there anyone else in the call that would like to ask any question?
Clear, thank you.
All clear. Okay. I hope you found it beneficial. I know there's a lot of golden nuggets that you've shared with us today, Mel, and I really appreciate your time. And it's always good to come off of these calls and reflect. And as Leanne said, digest as well, because it's nice to understand how one can take these learnings and apply it within your organization. There could be a level of confirmation, but there could also be a lot of low-hanging fruit that we often overlook and it falls off our radar. So yeah, thank you to the Anglo American team for joining and supporting Mel. And that just shows you what a great team you've got, eh? So connected. It's wonderful. And I will definitely be doing that.
I love how you think they had a choice, Celeste.
Well, I didn't want to go there. I'm sure they couldn't resist.
No, they actually just couldn't resist. Yeah, no, they're just gonna give me hell afterwards. That's basically why they joined. But yeah, thank you for having me, Celeste. And
only a pleasure. I'm so pleased we got this together. And we'll get the recording to the people that couldn't make it and definitely share it. And once again, thanks so much for everything, Mel. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Okay, bye.